No, I think I said what it's doing. I don't know. Ready to go?
You ready? Okay.
Hold on one second. Yeah, because the kids are small.
Is your camera on, Carly? No. Yes. I was on earlier though. It was, I saw your face. I can see it from my view. I can see everybody and it's on the YouTube stream. So we're okay. It's just not showing up there for some reason. But everybody is viewable on the stream. Okay. Then I will call our meeting to order at 5:05 p.m. I will read into the record our land acknowledgement. The Altadena Library District acknowledges its presence on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded land of the Gabrielino Tongva peoples. Altadena is located on the stolen homelands of the Hakamonga tribal band. The traditional territory of the Gabrielino Tongva is referred to as Tavongar, which includes the areas currently known as Los Angeles County, Riverside County, West San Bernardino counties, parts of Orange County, as well as the four, Southern Channel Islands. Entities such as the United States government and non-native settlers have subjected the Gabrielino Tongva people to the historic and continuing injustices, including genocide, forced displacement, and cultural and linguistic erasure. Altadena Library commits to learning, educating and informing its staff and residents of present-day Altadena about the rich history, vibrant communities, and culture of the Gabrielino Tongva people, present and past, through our collection development resources and program offerings. All right, so I will next open our meeting with a roll call vote. Trustee Andrews.
Here.
Trustee Clark. Here. Trustee Lim.
Here.
And I am here. Excuse me. Is there any reordering of any agenda items that needs to happen? Okay, then can I get a motion to adopt our agenda?
A second.
Okay, and we'll do a roll call. Trustee Andrews.
Aye.
Trustee Clark. Hi. Trustee Lim.
Aye.
And I vote for myself. Is there any public comment on any non-agenda items? No public comment. Okay, thank you very much. Alrighty then, move us to our consent calendar. Can we get a motion to approve our consent calendar?
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Thank you. Thank you. And then we'll do a roll call vote. Trustee Andrews.
Aye.
Trustee Clark. Aye. Trustee Lim.
Aye.
And I vote for me. Okay, and there are no items removed from the consent calendar that we need to discuss. So we will go into our department updates, review and special presentations. Are there any, are we doing presentations today? I know that we have a couple, but I have a busy one tonight. So then, are there any comments or questions about the department and reports? That can be found in your packet.
I've got one question. And I guess, actually, probably a question for you, although it's really a dated question. I seem to recall that we had pushed back a deadline on the RFP process for E-rate. And there was some discussion that we might need to schedule a special board meeting to accommodate that with their schedule. Do you have any updates on that or know where that stands?
I do not. I do know that he had mentioned it before he went on leave that we'd have to have a special board meeting, but it wasn't firm on when it would be.
That's fine. I didn't know if there was any news, but
Nope.
good enough. Thank you.
I had a quick question about, on the adult services department report. It had a little something there about the mobile library and that it's a quiet month in January. Staff will receive training in February, so the team is ready to go. So I was just wondering, mechanically, do you have teams of people that man the mobile system then when it goes out? In other words, you have the, not, which was ranking, but the A team and the B team, people rotate into that position? How does that work?
No, so Aaron Kimbrell, who is our innovations librarian, he oversees the mobile library and he just makes sure that everything's inside that we would need to go on an outreach event. But different ones of us get invited or are available to go. So as long as you are cleared to drive the vehicle and have received the training by him, then you are free to take the van out with another staff member to it.
Okay, so the training refers to when he gets involved, training people, make sure they're okay, got it.
Yes, and I actually received the training recently. And what he does is he takes you inside and shows you where everything is. You also test out opening the canopy that's attached to the van. And then he also takes you driving just to make sure you're okay driving a vehicle that size. Because some people are intimidated by it, but
Yeah, I wondered about that, but because it is a bigger vehicle than usual, so.
The same license, there's no additional like commercial.
no.
Thank you.
I had a quick question on the facilities report, for the Open Plus system, when is the plan rollout?
We don't have a hard deadline because it took a while to get the cameras in place, which we finally were able to get those installed and finalized sometime last month.
Right.
And so now we're on to the next phase of it, which is just to make sure, yes,
Card reader things?
Yes.
Is that the next technical thing?
Yeah, basically, we're getting all the implementation that we need to do, covering that goes over it, to install outside, and also we're gonna put basically everything to, we could put a control box inside.
And I had a question on that too. I didn't really quite understand what it was. Can you reflect on that? Is that, because when, the way I read it was, are people gonna be coming in when no one is?
they will be coming in when staff interaction is limited. So
Okay.
for example, we have staff here as early as like 8:30, but we don't open until 10. So a possible hours of operation for that would be 8:30 to 10. We'd be able to come in. So staff are here, but they're not at desk manning the service point.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Same with Saturdays, staff are here past our operating hours, our normal operating hours, I should say. And so they may be allowed, because we have not set firmly what the hours will be. But again, we like that staff are in the building, but there's also these cameras that for anything we don't catch, it'll be picked up there.
And what are some examples of, I guess, reasons why what would people be doing, like coming in to use like one of the room or?
On the
just
computer.
Okay.
Yeah, so they could, grab a quick book that they might need and check out. They can hop on the computers and print something off really quickly if they needed to. They could study and use the space that way as well. So no structured programs or anything like that, but just, unstructured visits, I should say.
Got it. Right. Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments, reflections on the department reports?
No, just that it was a full month.
Yeah. Very thorough report too. I was finding a lot of pictures and trying to think of everything.
I would echo that as usual. It's really great to see all the activity. And it's been helpful for me. I have engaged community members, very recently, tell them like all the events that are going on in the library. So I really use those reports heavily to do that. Like, did you know that they have all of these different things? And I still meet people that don't know all of the, the events that we have here. And I recently met someone that didn't actually know we were here. They only knew about the Lincoln Library. That was exciting that they made a visit to this library. I think they were supposed to come this weekend, so that was really cool. Okay. So then we will move to our reports from our support groups. And I don't believe that anyone is here from the Altadena Library Foundation.
Yes, so Anita was not able to make it and she was going to have Bridget come in her place, but she was also unable to make it at the last minute for an emergency. But they are willing to answer questions in the next meeting regarding the naming policy that they included in the board package. So that can be revisited if you have questions about that next month.
Yeah, Camila, do you have any insight onto this naming? So is this something that we and the library decide whether we go forward with this and make comments on this? What is the?
So basically, the genesis of all of this is the recognition that, as we go through these building projects, there will be presumably opportunities for naming, whether it's rooms or areas or benches or all kinds of things. And so as a public agency, obviously, we can't accept donations from people and name things after them. So the conduit, the sort of support group conduit that this goes through is through the foundation as a 501c3. So we had gone back and forth, this is last year now, about whether or not it made sense for this to be a library policy or a foundation policy. And what we settled on was that we do have some stuff in our facilities policy now that basically says how often we review things, what the process is for deciding how names get assigned to things, and basically it just goes through the board. But the whole kind of discussion around levels of contributions and how that might work and, solicitation of gifts, all of that is really a foundation problem. So they're putting this together and sending it to us as a like, hey, this is what we're thinking. But it's their call, right? So the idea would be that they would solicit funds and then they would make recommendations to us, which we could take or not take. But yeah, it's a normal kind of split for things. Universities do this all the time. So yeah, this is more sort of if we have any suggestions or questions or comments or reflections, but I mean, it's gone through a couple of iterations. We've looked at it on the facilities committee. I think it's good.
Yeah, so I mean,
Yeah.
We've had an interaction, but this is primarily informational.
Yeah.
And we've already given our feedback in a sense, right?
Well, so the facilities committee has given some feedback. But the full board has. So this is, I think, the first time it's coming to all of us. So if you have, if you've got questions or there are things that jump out at you, then definitely we want to have a chat with their foundation about that.
But this is not something we're doing at this meeting, of course, right? This is just
This is
information.
there,
for
that's
us
policy
as we
there,
go
yeah.
forward, right? Okay.
So I had a similar question. If it's informational that they're providing to us, will there be an item in the future where we have to approve this? Or is it still, it's it's solely with the foundation.
It is solely sits with the foundation, so I don't have the current language of our facilities policy in front of us, but I know for sure that when we looked at it, there had been a version that had a lot of this language in it, and we cut all of that out, because the feeling was like, hey, it doesn't really make sense for us as a public agency to be making delineations about like charitable giving, or it's not really our lane. So our facilities policy just basically says, we'll take into account a lot of factors, recommendations from the foundation and community importance and all kinds of things. So it's not really a policy that we enact. It's a policy that the foundation is proposing to guide their process. And then that would inform the recommendations they would bring to us at a future date.
Right. So most of our like recommendations, do we just funnel them in a sense through Camila, the liaison?
Oh, you mean about the policy?
Yeah.
Yeah, or you can probably reach out to Anita directly.
Directly?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
No, Bridget sent an email saying that she would also entertain questions.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah, we got, yeah. Okay.
So this is for us, it doesn't require any action on our part right now. Okay, so then, we have the Friends, and I believe that I saw, yes, online.
Well, hello, everybody. How's everybody doing? All right,
How
so
did
we
you
got lucky. The weather yesterday actually turned out to be gorgeous. We got a break in the weather, and we had the magnificent background of the snow-capped peaks above Altadena. We had very good support from our youth volunteers, so I want to say thanks, Isabel. And also thanks to Jonathan for all of his operational support. Everything really ran smoothly. So thank you, Jonathan. It is always a pleasure to work with you. We had a stellar day with a profit of $3,100.01 yesterday. And we also got over 40 new memberships yesterday. So all in all, it was a banner day for the Friends of the Altadena Library. Any questions?
How did you get 1 cent?
Not sure. That must have snuck into the cash box.
I missed it. What was the what is the word? The gains from the book sale?
30.
$3,101.01.
Got it. For some reason I heard 30. Okay,
And-
thank you.
And you had no trouble with the rain at all, it sounds like, huh?
Not at all. I did a dance in the morning, a rain dance, and it put everything off.
Oh, that's great.
That's awesome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. That's just a terrific
That's
report.
amazing.
That may be a record for one day.
That's amazing. Tom, when's the next book sale? Is it on the calendar?
It's the weekend after Mother's Day in May. And we expect to see all your smiling faces there. Please bring a trolley and buy some books.
Very good.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so
Okay,
much.
thank you.
Enjoy the snow.
Wish we could get some snow down here.
Mhm.
All right, next we have our district director's report, and actually we were going to provide that.
Yes. So good afternoon, trustees, staff, and members of the public, as well as our guests. I am giving the director's report on behalf of Nikki Winslow. And I'm gonna kick things off with welcoming Lauren Salerno, our new Bob Lucas Branch librarian. This evening, we are so excited to have her on the team. She has been a library professional for the last 20 years, with the bulk of that experience coming from the past 14 years she spent at Ontario City Library. And during her time there, she developed a number of programs, including Star Wars Day and Artopia. And it's amazing how much she loves Star Wars, so expect information on a Star Wars program and a board report near you. And I'm sure we will see some programming soon. Yeah, oh, May, okay. So that'll be in our June board report. Her first day with us was February 13th, and she has jumped right into her work at the Bob Lucas Library. She's on many teams already and just has really been such a welcoming presence to have her with us. So welcome, Lauren.
Welcome, Lauren. So glad you have
Welcome.
you. Thank you for coming. Yeah, for sure.
I had, Lauren, I just had a question reading your bio that you had in here. You got your degree in library science at North Texas University?
Yeah,
Is that right?
University of North Texas,
And that's in Lubbock, right?
Denton.
Okay, got it. That's great. And well, I'm just wondering, did they have a pretty good program that adapted you to that program?
They do have a very good program there. A lot of practical assignments that you can use in your library experience. So I was very impressed with their
Oh, that's great.
teaching.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. I would also like to introduce Sophia Araya. She's not present in the room with us today, but she is our new Youth and Family Services Manager. She started her library career as a library media assistant at an elementary school for several years. And after tons of experience gathered along the way, she started working for Ontario City Library, so similar to Lauren. And she was hired there as an early literacy librarian. During her time at OCL, she contributed to the Early Learning Agency strategic objective, which is called Little Learners Big Futures. And she has been a trainer for the California State Library's Reimagining School Readiness Training, where she has trained over 100 librarians statewide. She loves to read and is an avid traveler, and she was very excited to join the ALD team after she read our newsletters and saw all the programs that we do. So it's very nice to hear that that attracts people to join our team. So she officially started with us on February 21st. So if you're out there, Sophia, welcome to you as well. Welcome. All right, so I'm gonna move us on to hiring update. We held external panel interviews for the Bob Lucas Library Assistant on Friday, February 17th. And we have selected the top 3 candidates to be interviewed this week. And we are hopeful that we can make an offer to someone in early March. We also have our Adult Services Manager recruitment still going on right now. We actually have received some really good applications for that position. So we hope to schedule the external interview panel within the first few weeks of March to get the ball rolling on that. And we also have a recruitment out there for library clerk, where we're hoping to hire 2 staff members through that recruitment. One for the Youth and Family Services Department. This is to replace a previous employee. And then the other position would be someone who works closely with all the programs and events that we have here that can provide setup support, technological support, and just really help the staff prepare for all the many programs we do, as you can see. So if you know anyone that would like to join our team, please spread the word and direct them to our website. Okay, so as was shared in January, we welcomed our new HR services consultant, Patty Francisco, and she provides on-demand HR services. She conducted a few Tea with Patty sessions this past month, and she also put together an ALD staff feedback survey that was sent directly to ALD staff members. And she's working on synthesizing all of that information so that she can share it to the management team, the staff at an all-staff meeting, as well as to you guys, the board. So that will be coming soon. Next, I will talk about our Habitat for Humanity ALD Service Day. And I want to start that off by thanking the board for allowing us to close on April 27th so that we can provide this service day opportunity to staff. So we will be building a house in Altadena. This is the first home that has been built in the Altadena community by Habitat. So we are very excited to be a part of this project. Part of the effort is that staff need to fundraise $2,500, and we are already at 29% of that goal. So we are going to keep on going, and hopefully we will accomplish our goal. Big thanks to Yvonne Green, who is our staff accountant. She helped us schedule the build day as well as build the donation page where we can track all the funds that are donated. And I'd also like to thank the staff recognition team who has also helped push staff and get us motivated to accomplishing this goal.
What's the deadline for the, is there a deadline, like a hard deadline? Yes, it's March. I can't remember the exact date. I can search that. Every time. Yeah, it's a date in March, toward the end of March.
Okay. That's the deadline for donations,
For the
okay.
donations, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, while Catalina is looking for that, I'll continue. So the main library made it to the Super Bowl. He didn't have to play in the game. So that was very exciting. A few days before Christmas, a commercial was filmed here, and there was some swirls going around that maybe it might be a commercial that would air during the Super Bowl, and was exactly what it was. So it aired right before the big game on Sunday. So we've heard from various library users that they recognized us in the commercial. So that was exciting too. We felt like celebrities.
Is there a story about how we were picked for that? Or did you talk to any of the production folks to find out what their mindset was about this particular building?
I did not, Jonathan. I know Jonathan and Nikki were here the evening that they came. Did they say anything at all?
They scouted our building around here. One of the scout, that's location scout that was, lives in the area. And she was very pleased that we were open to do this.
Okay,
And we came after hours and they just loved the mid-century feel.
okay, good.
And so they were very impressed with it. We had a lot of scouting companies come before and they liked the mid-century feel here.
Yeah, it's kind of a big deal, you know, the Super Bowl commercial.
Yeah, it is.
I wonder about that.
The scout actually uses our library too.
Oh,
really?
Yeah, she uses libraries.
That's cool.
And she came back again with another potential filming. And it was gonna be, but they couldn't do it at that time.
Right. Okay, on to partnerships and programming. So on Sunday, January 29th, we had our first Mount Low Chamber Players concert here on the main floor of the main library. And this is a Friends of the Library sponsored event, and it is the first of 3 concerts that we have scheduled this winter and spring. We had 135 people attend, and they were really excited about the concert and are already looking forward to the next 2. They will be held on March 26th and on May 21st, should you wish to attend. And thanks to Deb Halberstadt for sending us the photos from that evening. So Black History Month is happening now, and that's not part of what we normally report on today because we're here to talk about January. But we thought it was a good idea just to let you know that even though you'll get full board report next month, we really put together a lot of programming for Black History Month this year, and they were very well attended. Just a few of the programs to note was Song Again, which was very well attended. It was the first program where I've seen someone cry here at Altadena because of how moved they were by the performance. That was really awesome to be here and witness that. We also had STEAM story times. We showed the movie The Hate You Give, as well as provided a book discussion. And we had an author talk featuring William Gould, which was so well attended, it became standing room only in here. So aside from the programs, we had some really great displays, both in the library locations as well as on our website. So I look forward to reporting in full on those events next month. But this concludes the district director's report. Any questions? Thank you.
Good job, thank you.
Any questions for Ashley?
No, that's great.
Thank you. We'll move to the financial report. So I have Christie on here. I do this one now. And I guess you will speak to the financial reports in this. Christie?
Yep, good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. The financial reports tonight start on page 42, and I will go through, just point out a few of the highlights, but we will get into it in more detail because tonight we're also presenting mid-year budget proposals that were presented to the Finance Committee earlier in the month. So I'll be brief on this unless you have questions, but I'll just point out a few high-level things. So first of all, revenue on page 42, revenue is year-to-date, this is through January at 4.16 million, which is over budget. And that's primarily due to property taxes coming in. The assessments are all updated through the county in December, January. And so they have come in a little higher, and you'll see that adjustment later in the budget as well. And then also fines and fees are on target to be over budget, again, because passport services have increased and passport photos that had not been in the past are now back and running. And so the revenues there are increasing. If you get down into expenses, there's a couple of lines that you can see are either at or over budget. And again, they will be adjusted when we get to the mid-year, but insurance, all due to rates coming in higher, renewals coming in higher than were known at the time that the budget was created. County tax, the collection fees are right there at 100%, close to 100%, because those are all paid when they're assessed. So that line is already at its full budget. Other operating had to do with the copier lease. That's a big line that you'll see in the budget increase. The district had determined that it was going to purchase copiers, but because of delays in receiving those, they've had to continue on a month-to-month lease. So those were unanticipated. And again, we'll make adjustments. On a positive note, because your election did not need to go to the the county ballot, you will save. There are no election expenses. So you'll see that as an adjustment. That's a $75,000 increase that will help the budget. There are a few other lines that are over, a little accounting, of course, because there was a transition from having a full-time person to using more of iBailey services. So there's going to be an adjustment there. But bottom line is that to date, the addition that would go to the addition to the reserve would be 1.8 million. And that's as of January. So that's 7 months in, where you had budgeted the use of 19,000. The next page, 44, are donations and grants. And most of the revenue has been received and recorded. You'll see that above. And again, some have even contributed additional funds. You'll see that in the adjustments. The expenses, anything that's not on target with, in the 50 to 8% range, is mostly due to timing. For instance, the vending machine is going to be a late purchase. I believe the mobile van is finally coming. Those will change your figures here. And then a few of the other timing of some of the programs and things that you'll start to see those expenses come in the second part of the year. But again, budgeting for grants, we do budget to use all of the revenue and all the expense in the same year. The goal is to use everything that is received in that year from the supporters. The next statements, 45 and 46, are combined. So it just is a total of everything that's happening. And then in one column where general funds are being used, in the second column where we're using donations and grants. And you can see kind of where those expenses fall in. I'm going to skip all the way down to another, I think we just started including this document on page 48 so that you can see what you received in bond proceeds and how that money is being spent. It's not very detailed at this point because, as you know, it's in the project management, architect phase, design phase. As soon as we start to see more construction expenses, you'll see this get laid out a little bit in a little more detail. But it does let you know that roughly 1.6 million of the proceeds have been used to date. And then on the balance sheet, assets of 32 million. And you can see primarily that's, 22 of it are those special tax funds, tax bonds. 4.5 of it is the money that's held in the county. And then of course, of the property taxes I talked about, they assess them, but then those are collected through the remainder of the fiscal year. So there is a large receivable there. Very small liabilities other than the piece that goes back for the bond payable, and then the pensions, the different allocations that we make there. We do not change those until year end. So I kind of went through that quickly in all the pages, but are there any questions that you have over those reports?
I don't really have a question. This is just a suggestion. I think that we should change the name of line 3. It's called fines and fees, and we really don't charge library fines. And so I feel like it's super misleading if someone were to look at it. It's really just passport services and other miscellaneous income.
That's a very good point. Film rentals, things like that. Yeah, you're correct, are in some of those lines. Okay.
Yeah, just fines. Every time I see it, I'm like, oh God, what did we find? No, we didn't.
Yeah, and you're correct. Yes, that's a great suggestion. I'll make sure that Nikki and I do that before the next report.
I really like the combined regular operation budget plus donations and grant budget. That's really helpful to see how we're splitting out some of those costs. So just thank you for that.
Great. Okay.
Any other questions?
And we're gonna see you again for the adjustments. on the-
When you get to the adjustments, yes.
Thank you. Talk soon. All right, then let's move to the Board of Trustees Standing Committee reports, and I believe we have the Budget Committee report.
I'm not.
Oh, you're sure not anymore, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Trustee.
Jason prepared it. We're going through it right now. Christy walked us through it with Nikki. We looked over it and we will hopefully review and approve the adjustments.
Thank you. All right, then Facilities Committee.
Yeah, so thanks to everybody who came out for the town hall meetings that we had in late January, early February. I'm delighted to tell you that we had 92 attendees at our first town hall and 51 attendees at the second, and that's both in person and online attendance. So pretty good turnout for both of those. And we've been continuing to, address questions and answer in more depth questions that folks had as a result of those town halls or subsequent to them. So if you guys do run across folks who have any questions or concerns, just send them our way, and we're making sure that we field all of those. Other than that, everything is continuing to proceed at pace. I think, our two big question marks as we continue down the process right now are around offsite storage. So like, where does everything go when the library closed? And we're really trying to work with PUSD to make that arrangement happen at Franklin. As well as some questions around parking at the main library, especially some head-in parking on Mariposa. We're trying to figure out how we can coordinate that with the county. So those are both interagency questions that we are working on. But everything else is in good shape. It's moving forward. Happy to answer any questions.
So could you Expand on the parking on Mariposa. I
Yeah.
mean, we had talked about, trying to change the number of lanes or something.
Yeah,
Is
so.
that real?
No, it is real. So there has been like for a really long time, there's been a conversation about narrowing Mariposa on our block down to 2 lanes the way it is further down, right, closer to Lake.
Mhm.
With the thinking being that like, we really don't need 4 lanes of traffic on Mariposa. It shouldn't be going, that fast. We don't really have the volume. So the idea would be to put in some head-in parking on our block, kind of where the book drops are now, to have head-in parking there. Possibly some on the other side of the street and or thinking about ways to, use some of that space around the senior center as well. And so the county has had several versions of this plan, but it's never really gone anywhere. So our thinking is that this is probably a really good time to figure out what would be an ideal situation, get with our colleagues on town council and think about, what makes sense, and then try to move this through while we're doing the renovation. A ton of unanswered questions about like what that all looks like and what's realistic. But I think we're at the point right now where we're trying to come up with the best possible scenario and then collaborate with council to see what they think.
I've noticed some county, lines across the street around here in Altadena, counting cars and, I mean, typically they're doing that when they're considering some kind of a road change, but none of that has anything to do with us so far, right? As far as you know.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
Not to my knowledge.
You know what I'm talking about, the little
Yeah, I know what you're.
pneumatic counters. and
Yeah,
stuff
they
that.
like restripe stuff sometimes as well. I know, yeah.
And then we did have those 2 traffic deaths locally.
We did, yeah, and I know that.
They're measuring things about that too.
I think that's right. I think there's a kind of a lot of questions around traffic circulation generally. And I know this is one of the reasons we want to work with town council because they have been doing a lot of deals in Suffolk County on that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for the facilities committee? Okay, move to redistricting. We have a summary in your packet. On Monday, the 23rd of January, we officially kicked off the redistricting process with the first of our 4 required community meetings. The second was on Monday, February 13th, and Kristen was there and presented an overview of redistricting, and we'll have our next meeting is scheduled for March 25th. Prior to that, on the 18th, we'll get a glimpse at some draft maps. We are required to post those 1 week before the meeting. So on the 18th, we'll have a glimpse of what some potential maps will look like. And then we'll have a special town hall style meeting here at the library for folks to take a look at that and offer any feedback that they have on those maps. So we're looking forward to that. And the last meeting is scheduled for April, blanking on the date, but I believe it's our regularly scheduled board meeting for that month. And we will hopefully have a finalized map after that, after people have the opportunity to review the draft maps and give their feedback. So I'm looking forward to seeing what those look like on the 18th. I believe all of us should have received an email to provide our address. And we're hoping that some magic will happen and we will already naturally be seated into districts. No, it's not gonna happen. We'll see. But we'll see what those maps look like on the 18th. So that is my report for redistricting.
And then, on the report, it did give a little link that you can go to pull up a map on our website. And that's just sort of a preliminary holding map of while all this goes on, and then the boundaries start to get drawn in as we go forward. Okay.
Yes, and people can play around with the numbers and look at some of the data that Kristen shared with us in the meeting.
Okay. Good.
Any questions from me on that? Any additional questions?
No, it sounds like we're marching through the meetings we're obligated to have. And then that one, the last one you talked about, then we get down to action about, okay, got it.
All right, thank you.
So we'll move to our liaison report, and Terry, I believe you have a government liaison report in our packet for us.
Right, I do. And this has to do with a bill, a state bill introduced by Chris Holden, who's our assemblyman here in District 41. And the bill is called AB 41. And it's known as the Digital Equity and Video Franchising Act of 2023. And the reason it's on, this report is that now is the time for interested parties to make comments about whether or not they like this bill, whether, it should be supported, because it's going into committee, and apparently in committee, the influence of letters and so on that are sent to endorse this are taken a little more seriously because it's a smaller audience and so on. So there was a town hall meeting that was held back in January on the 18th that I watched just to see what was going on. And this really is a worthy bill because it tries to establish, or intends to establish what is called that digital. I'll explain in just a minute, but it is basically a reform of another law called the Digital Infrastructure and Video Act of 2006. And that was a law that was intended to do level the playing field for people getting access to high-speed internet, broadband, and so on. But it had the unintended consequence of really leaving thousands of California households without access to video or broadband service. You can see them listed here. And there's limited competition, which we all get annoyed about. There's only 2 or 3 at the most companies that will provide service locally, and they really control the market. And because of that, they're not really operating at their peak efficiency, and there's lots of people that can't afford to have internet. And an interesting topic that came up during the town hall meeting was a difference between Altadena and Pasadena, even though they're talking about all of District 41, which goes well beyond that. And they were saying that the people in Pasadena are hard pressed to support or to purchase the same service that we get here in Altadena for $30 less a month. So there's all this inequity that's going on, and they really want to have a law that sort of really establishes video or digital equity for the entire community. And what digital equity is described as a condition of digital access that is needed for all individuals to have full participation in our society, democracy, and economy. And they gave several examples of how this works at a regional level, and that is that it improves schooling issues. You would know that right off the bat, but also things like telehealth and also workplace related access to broadband produces a workforce or work people searching for work that have better upbringing or better education in digital techniques and so on, and they get twice as much money in many cases for having that digital knowledge. So anyway, I can go on and on about this, but the idea is that, and you'll see this later on page 85, I think it would be a good idea for us as an institution to write a letter of support for this and get it into the committee. For the committees when they're deciding to look at this.
So Karen, for page 85, so is this like who's being are we writing the letter as board of trustees, or is the
So we
library
have a
district?
little point of order on this.
Yeah.
Because this is not an agendized item, so we can't vote on it. It's in a report, but we don't have an agendized action item.
We have one, but it's later.
It comes later. in the-
Yeah, I was doing the,
So I can talk to about the letter and how it's put together when we get to that point.
right,
Yeah, and if you've got any comments on what I've said so far about how it's
Right.
law going to make things better for people and so on, I've got a whole list, as you can see, of things that I can talk to you about. that.
Right, perfect.
Okay.
yeah, I guess we'll save the letter.
Yeah, just so we're doing the right bit at the right time.
Thank you, Carrie. Would you like to say more about the?
That's good. I mean, I just wanted to you know, try to lay out the importance of land access, which I really think is important. And how it also affects us locally rather than district-wide, it's statewide, actually, and it really affects us locally as well.
Gary, did they have any kind of statistics on like how many households in Altadena have broadband access, have internet access? I know that's the thing that we think about all the time as we're trying to, you know, get hotspots to people and think about how to bridge that digital divide.
In the, I'm doing this from memory, but
Yeah.
in the entire district, there are about 5,000 households that can't get access to broadband. And then there's a whole issue about what is broadband, is it uploaded 25 and 3, I think it is. It really should be like 125, 100/25.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of things going on in this bill that would help produce the equity, number one, and also help raise the standard for broadband as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much.
Very good. All right, so we are moving toward new business. We have no unfinished business to speak of. So our first item of new business is review and approval of the district director's contract, which is an action item. In accordance with government code section 54953C3, the legislative body is required to orally report a summary of recommendation for a final action on the salary schedule, or compensation paid in the form of fringe benefits of a local agency's executive during an open meeting in which the final action is to be taken. This item includes the approval of the district director employment agreement. Under the agreement, the district director would be paid, one, an annual base salary of $198,345. Two, make sure, health, medical, and retirement benefits in accordance with the district policy and CalPERS regulation. Three, vacation and sick leave in accordance with the district policy. Four, a mobile phone for use in district business. 5, 100 hours of annual administrative leave, and 6, a vehicle allowance of $600 per month. Okay. May I have a motion to approve the district director's contract?
So moved.
I'll second. Yep.
And we'll move to a roll call vote. Trustee Andrew.
Aye.
Trustee Clark. Aye. Trustee Lynn.
Aye.
And I vote for me. Thank you.
Did it. I've been working on it since November.
All right, next item on our agenda is the review and approval of the IT and facilities assessment consultant, which is also a section item. And I believe that is, we do have, yes, we have Carlos Bafico here to answer any questions. So,
Yeah, just a short introduction on that.
yes,
for
please,
anybody
thank
who's
you.
tuning in. So last month, this was brought to the board. You have requested to have some more detail in the proposal. So it's come back this month, and we've invited Carlos to also speak on that. If the board has any questions about this work. So we have them here. Let me get the.
Sure, unless you'd like to bring me elsewhere. It'll be all right.
Okay, I'm just gonna turn on this microphone.
Great.
So this moves around, but we need to adjust this. Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Well, thank you for having me here today.
Thank
Appreciate
you
it.
for being here. Are there any questions that you have immediately for their people?
Are you gonna give us a little presentation, or are we just?
I sure
Just
can.
Q&A.
I'm not sure how you're gonna go about this, but certainly I have a little statement here. And then first of all, thank you very much for having me here today. My name is Carlos Bafico, and I'm here regarding the proposal for facilities and IT consulting services. I've worked in libraries for over 30 years, and most recently held the position of acting deputy library director for the Pasadena Public Library, overseeing facility, safety, security, and technology. During that time, I worked closely with Pasadena Library District Director Nikki Winslow and IT and Technical Services Manager David Zerboff on several Pasadena Glendale technology initiatives when they worked at the Glendale Public Library, so I worked closely with them. Towards the end of last year, 2022, I began a partnership with the California Library Association and also the California State Library for an educational webinar series to teach library facility management, terminology, and concepts to library supervisors and managers. From that series, I had the pleasure of meeting Altadena Library District Facility Manager, Jonathan Arevalo, who contacted me as a follow-up to ask a few questions related to the webinars. Also talk about the future library construction projects that Altadena is undertaking, and also give me a tour of the main library. And so we did that. After the meeting with Jonathan, I had a conversation with Director Winslow and discussed the possibility of providing consulting services focused on facility and IT, and specifically providing ongoing education for staff on those topics, as well as assessing existing facility and IT infrastructure and providing ongoing, policies, procedures, and just an overview of those aspects of library operations. A proposal dated January 17th, 2023 was submitted for your consideration, which was discussed by you on January 23rd. A subsequent conversation with Director Winslow revealed the need for revision to the original proposal based on your comments, the trustees' comments, requesting for more detail on the scope of work, and also to expand the scope to include consultant support for your future building projects, both at the main library and also at Bob Lucas Memorial Branch. A revised proposal was submitted on February 13th. And so here I am to answer any questions you may have about the proposal or the scope of service. Anyway. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Well, I was gonna say, whenever I come to, services or consultant type services and so on, it's always hard for me to mesh everything together because I'm not quite sure exactly what the routine is for what's happening now. But the things that are of most interest to me on the board is how are we going to integrate the two libraries in the 22nd century, for example, really looking to the future. And I get from this that these are the sorts of things that you're looking out for, looking into the distance, what's happening with digital, types of systems and so on, and keeping us right at the cutting edge of all this. Is that a fair statement?
That is a fair statement. That's the IT side of things. So where I come in, really, I'm essentially the liaison between library operations and building management, including IT. So yes, we're certainly the goal is to look into the future and prepare staff to be able to operate a new building and keep it operational and maintained, again, both from the facilities end and from the IT end. And so in doing that, we certainly need a education plan to get us to that, to a good standard, so that we can identify issues early on, we can deal with those issues, and hopefully prevent those issues in the future. Again, talking about facilities and IT. So yes, part of the process is to first understand what you have in place, and then how to implement improvement, and then look forward to future goals as well. So that's all part of it, as well as, of course, working with the staff, the director, and all of you for any questions or any way that I can assist in the construction process. Of course, I'm part of the technical.
David's pretty good about keeping us up to date on the drills that he has here for computer lockdown and safety and so on. Do you get involved in those issues as well?
Certainly,
Okay.
certainly. And I'll be Upfront, of course, I'd be new to this environment. However, I bring a lot of experience from other places as well, and so I think the first stage is for me to understand what systems we have in place, and then work with David, work with Jonathan and Nikki and her staff to implement some standards and best practices and initiatives moving forward.
Great, thank you for that expanded look. I appreciate that.
If I may, so thank you so much for being here with us tonight, Mr. Trustee. We appreciate it. I'm wondering if you could give me some specific examples of what falls under procedural and regulatory compliance. Are we talking about like data privacy? Are we talking about what's in those categories?
Procedural and compliance, regulatory compliance really has to do more with making sure that we meet, that the Altadena Library District meets, for example, on the facilities end, meets code on everything from safety and security issues. It could be to IT, and making sure that they're at the very minimum, we're meeting the regulations and we're meeting the standards that are set out there. Building codes being just a obvious matter that we have to undertake, but making sure that we are there. We don't have anything where risk and liability could be an issue both for the existing building and moving forward as well. But that also applies to IT. Of course, there are regulations in regards to IT, how you process, for example, online payments, how you the retention of records and all those things. So it's a very, very broad scope, and there's quite a lot to undertake. Of course, we're not going to solve every problem, but at the very least, we can identify the issues that are most glaring and hopefully come up with solutions to it.
Right. So I think one of the reasons we asked for this to come back as an item was in an effort to kind of get some more specificity. And
Correct.
I think I'm still struggling a little bit. So maybe can you describe for us maybe a problem you solved in the past or an example of a similar kind of analogous situation where your expertise was the defining factor that,
Sure. I'll give you probably one of the highlights. At the city of Pasadena, we undertook, well, I'll back up a little bit, as you may well know, the central library closed due to seismic retrofit infrastructure or structural issue. At that point, there was a very sudden need to relocate facilities, relocate collection services, all of that, in a quick timeline. I was able to establish new lease space, for example. We were able to negotiate a lease agreement with PUSD, you brought up earlier, and take one of their campuses, the Jefferson Elementary School campus, and transform that really in a matter of 9 months. From the time that we signed the lease until the time that we opened the building for services, and relocate everything, bring the abandoned building to code and to standards to where it could be occupied by the public and staff, as well as work with other departments. For example, we also work with the Pasadena Fire Department to open up their fire training academy, expand those activities. Brought in a police substation, and also an after-school program for high-risk youth. Those were all partnerships that came out of the need for alternate space and the ability to be able to make those connections and meet the needs of other departments as well. So going back to your question, I'm certainly well aware of the process that you are looking forward to. And in the very near future, years not that far out for example, for Bob Lucas, for Bob Lucas French. But, I believe I can certainly bring in some of that experience and hopefully have you not made the same mistakes that we made, and that I've learned from.
Like what? What are some of those things that happened?
Well, specifically, let's see. I think some of the basic ones are making sure that, for example, the lease agreement includes everything in regards to maintenance and who's going to be responsible when a package unit goes out on the roof. Or if you have a leak because of that package unit going out. Is that the school district as you're looking at their campus as an alternate site? Or is that the district, right? The library district. That's a simple one, but it's something that sometimes gets overlooked. Those details get overlooked. And you don't know until you actually come across that issue, right? So that would be an example.
Great.
Sure.
Thank you. Nothing else for you right now.
Yeah, my only question is on the deliverables. Can you explain what a library profile document is and why we need it?
Sure. Well, actually, Jonathan knows what the library profile is. It's a document that I developed to really bring together and bring into one physical booklet most of the information that any library staff worker would need to make a decision on any type of facility issue, whether it's IT or facility related. So within it, you have the specifications of the building, for example, what the square footage is readily available. You have the number of elevators readily available. Your elevator vendor, their phone number, their address, the account numbers, all those things, and of course, those are just examples, but for every, or at least most of the major systems in your building, it's a comprehensive tool that you can just refer to very quickly, not only in the case of an emergency, but just as a practical matter on a day-to-day basis when you need to, like I said, you know, you're curious about, okay, who's the let's see. I mentioned elevators, who's the current fire alarm vendor? If the fire alarm, for example, goes off, it may not always be available. And so staff really need to know, and that's something that I also emphasize in the education that I provide, is for staff to be empowered to understand at the very least where to find a resource and be able to act on it. Because again, the expert might not always be available. And typically, for example, at Bob Lucas, I would assume, and I don't know this, but I would assume that there isn't a facility person at Bob Lucas 24/7, or at least during opening hours. For the library manager over there to be able to have that information on hand and know who to call and have that information at the tips of their fingers. It's a very practical document that I provide. And there is a process, of course, to making sure that it's completed. It's approximately 25 to 30 pages of information about facilities, IT systems.
I guess my one question for this, is this a proposal or is this like a option list and then to be pursued at a later date?
So
I guess
the proposal, I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's my question.
Sure. The proposal that you have in front of you is essentially an hourly proposal.
Right.
With a total sum not to exceed.
Mhm.
It seemed that would be the best way to go about the proposal at this point in time. I can tell you that there are a lot of unknowns. And especially with the projects that you have forthcoming, for construction. We really can't tell at this point, aside from, education and the assessments and overview of the existing systems, how you may be able to, or how I may be able to contribute to those activities. Certainly, like I mentioned before, I've been through, everything from new additions to working with architectural and design firms and the gamut. However, I think it would be even hard for, Director Winslow at this point in time to say exactly how she would be able to best use my resource, me as a resource in the knowledge that I bring forward.
So can I jump in and ask a follow-up question? I have a list of 4 questions for you, but we're gonna start there. So with the hourly amount not to exceed, are you saying then that we're not locked into that contracted amount that we can use as little as, and then up to that amount of like, I think like $3,300 or $1,000 or something like that? Is that what you're saying with your last comment?
What I'm saying is that I was asked by Director Winslow to provide a proposal. And so I, of course, I took into account the original proposal and what the scope of that was going to be and the training and so on that I can provide. And then thought about the process of everything from design to construction, and where it can be a benefit. And gave you the second proposal. However, I fully realize that the number of hours for the total amount that was proposed could exceed the need, or I'm sorry, could be less than the need, right? And so I'm certainly open to coming back to you or having that proposal be brought back and revised, depending on what the need is as we move forward.
So then back to one of my other questions I have, it seems like from what I understand, there would be an initial, like an assessment of what is it how can you best support the library? You can't really do that until there is an assessment to really show that. Would that be accurate?
That's accurate. It needs to be, I need, for example, I need to understand what systems are going to, first of all, what systems you have in place currently. What systems will remain even after construction, and then what new systems are going to be brought on board. For example, you're getting a new elevator. It may be different than the piston elevator that you currently have. I'm not sure exactly what they're going to propose, but I can tell you that it's going to be new. It's going to be different. It's going to be new technology, and certainly that may result in some additional training that I may have to do with staff to bring them up to speed.
Right. So to use the term SWOT, which is like, I don't know if you're familiar with strength, weaknesses, opportunity, threat. So it sounds like, because I'm also really trying to understand, one of my questions was going to be, tell me what you're going to do in like layman's terms. But it sounds like it would be like an analysis of what needs to happen and then responding to like plugging those holes based on your assessment of what how you can best serve the Altadena Library with your specific needs. But it's not, from what I understand in the proposal, it's not specific right now because it's not clear what those things might be.
Correct. I can tell you, of course, some of the constants that will take place throughout the period of the contract, or throughout the term of the contract, is certainly identifying some of those risks of liability that may exist, right? And also the training component. As we move forward, as staff are exposed more and more to the construction environment, they're gonna need to know what's happening. Like, why do we need this? Why is this taking so long? And so that's where I can certainly and will certainly provide some education
Right.
for them.
And that actually dovetails into one of the other questions that I have. Is it your current, I guess, assessment or your understanding of the director's assessment that the entities or structures in place would not, for example, if we have the facilities committee there, that is not adequate enough to address those concerns about, like, you know, helping staff understand what's going on with the construction at that moment, or making sure that that we understand, you know, about the package on the roof. So we don't, I guess I'm asking, like, we don't have already the resources to do what it is that you are proposing to do.
So typically, a committee, as Lynn mentioned, and I'm not intimately familiar with their role, but from what I know of having worked with past committees, is that their role is not to necessarily educate to the level that I would, and the services that I would bring.
Okay.
Their level is to give maybe an overview. Okay, for example, we talked about package units, air conditioning units. They might say, well, yes, there are, you know, 5 or 6 of them on the roof. What they do and how they work, nobody knows. Why there might be a leak coming from those units because of a condensation, for example. It might not be a roof leak. It might just be the package unit that's creating that, the refrigerant lines. That's the kind of detail that I can provide. Not only that, I can also provide some Q&A sessions for them to ask questions about what it is that they don't understand, and for me to explain to them, okay, in very basic terms, or as in depth as I've been, answer those questions and be able to spend time with them, so that in the process they feel comfortable, they feel empowered to be and heard during a very kind of tumultuous time and change. So I think I can bring a lot more than a committee can, and because the role is different.
Right. Okay. My last question is it out of the order of things, I guess, to have that, you know, the initial like assessment done before then, and like, can you do an assessment and then make a proposal based on, this is specifically what I think that you need, and specifically how I can meet those needs? Is that out of ordinary to do it that way versus kind of having a more open-ended proposal?
I think you can certainly, for example, contract me to come in and do an assessment, right? I don't know that that's necessarily something that you would want to do in this circumstance, just because of the fact that you're not gonna have this building for very long, in the way that it currently is.
Right.
So why would you want to do an in-depth assessment for me to provide information about, you know, every single deficiency that I see? On the other hand, having me come in and work with staff, and not only assess the physical building, but also assess the operational side as it relates to facilities and IT. Assess their level of understanding and education, because again, I'm gonna I'm always gonna go back to that. Staff need to know what their environment is, how it operates, how do the lights come on, maybe. That's very basic, but they need to understand the environment that they're operating in, not only for the sake of understanding the building, but also for the sake of security. Big part of library operations is security itself. And so being able to know when you have blackout, what do you do, right? I mean, you've got maybe 100, 200 people in the building. Yes, there are procedures for that. At least I would assume that there are procedures for that. However, understanding where the electrical panel is and what to do about it. Do you touch it? Do you not touch it? Do you flip a breaker? Do you not? There's so many aspects of an assessment. Yes, there is a building assessment that you can do. There's an IT assessment you can contract for. But what I bring to the table and what I bring to this district is a combination of different aspects. The assessment, but also making sure that your staff is ready for the change you're about to undertake, that they understand the system, that they understand their environment, and hopefully, be at a better place when your new building comes to fruition.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Those are all my questions.
Right. Glad to answer.
Well, I based on Camila's drill down, I want a couple of follow-up questions from me to make sure I understand it correctly.
Sure.
You're signing for a 1-year contract and there's a 150-hour cap on it. So if we don't use all those hours, we'll get charged for those hours, all right?
I will only charge for whatever.
For what
is
you do, and then if
actually
you go over, then we bring it to the board.
No,
whatever
the cap was really, that was, I think that was more on the administrative side, when I spoke with Nikki, that there should be a cap. I'm okay with a cap. I'm also okay with no cap, because for me, there is, I provide what you need as much as I can. And whether that takes 10 hours, whether it takes 100 hours or 150 hours, or maybe more, that'll be determined by what the need is.
Got it.
So, but I am open to go beyond that cap, obviously, if need be, as long as my time.
And
allows
so
for it.
the myriad problems we might experience with all this stuff going forward, you are our resident expert on this, and that's basically what this is about, right?
I would hope so.
Okay, gotcha. That's all I had.
By the way, I should add that and I mentioned my time, that may be a factor, right? I am working with a couple of architectural firms on building expansions and also new buildings. And so it'll be a juggling of resources that gets on my end. That might be why a cap, why would we hit the cap? And okay, for this year, that might be the limit.
Well, I can see us needing someone to help us guide us through all this stuff as it really ramps up, so. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Mr. Papico? Oh, maybe?
Not a question, but I think for us, right, in terms of when I see the word deliverable, that's a thing, right? It's a deliverable. So right now, you're signing up, creating the comprehensive library profile document, which we already said, it's kind of gonna be obsolete, right? Or partially obsolete once we move over.
Well, I think it's a living document. I think that's the way that I've always intended for it to be. You can never, it's a snapshot in time, yes.
Yes.
However, the idea behind that document is for you to continually update it, because if you don't, then it's like, any other,
Right.
any other document that just that gets dated just because you don't use it or you don't update it.
Right, but I just think the scope is large.
Yeah.
Which is again, part of the kind of like discussion we had previously. And then the deliverables, in a sense, like to Camila's point, we don't know what we don't know, right? In terms of what's gonna happen in the future. So it's hard to grok whether this is the right like set in a sense.
Yeah, I think, I mean. From my perspective, I'm really interested in number two, right? Like the deliverables, okay, I don't know that to me feels like it encapsulates the needs that we have in the district, but I do think we have a real need for expertise, and we have a need for somebody who has overseen the process of moving library services to an alternate location, especially if that ends up being a PUSD location, and all the exciting, things that happen. So to have someone on call with that experience, to me, feels real important. I don't know that these deliverables are all convincing to me, but I kind of don't care that much in a way, because I'm more concerned that we have sort of expertise available. I guess what I would suggest is perhaps it makes more sense to have, like progress reports every so often, because I'd like to capture that information that we learn, right? So that it doesn't just exist in Mr. Bafigo's head and then in conversations in committee and.
Yeah, I don't know if progress reports may be the right way. I guess it's what is the targeting function, right?
Right.
What is the prioritization for what we want
Right.
Carlos to do? And I don't see it here.
It feels very amorphous.
Yes,
It feels very amorphous, and I would not like to see us, with all due respect, get, $10,000 down the line and go, what do we do? What are we doing exactly? Like, I just like to make sure that there's a little bit more of maybe a project schedule or a timeline or a sense of like what are the dependencies? It's not clear at all to me that the assessment has to precede some of these conversations or doesn't precede some of these conversations. So I still feel like there's a bunch of question marks, which is in no way an assessment of expertise or value to the district. It's more a question for me of what is the process that we're going through? What does that look like? What are our sort of phases? How do we know if we've done it successfully? From this, I don't have a sense of that. And maybe you all do.
I would come back to my earlier inquiry. So for, to use your words, like, yeah, it would not be great for us to get, $10,000 in and like, wait, why, what's happening here? But it's also my understanding that should that happen, that we are not contracted to continue to go forward, right? So those hours can be, like Mr. Bafigo said, as much as or as little. So it also seems to me that it could be thought as, on an as needed, like we have this, ability to utilize those hours, but we are not required to use those hours. And I just want to make sure that that is true, that we're not like on the hook for the total amount of dollars should it shake down, a month in, 2 months in, that, maybe we're in better shape. I don't know that that is true.
Or maybe that we don't need all this information right now. Maybe we need to like really wait 6 months until we've gotten further along in the architectural process and then ask some of those questions. I guess my concerns are more project management than whether or not the project should happen.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, again, from a skill set, we're gonna need like
Right,
this
no,
entire
that's not
thing,
the,
like
that's not the
zero
question.
question.
Yeah, right.
But to me, it's like my analogy from work, right? Is like Carlos is a weapon and we don't want to use a spoon when he's more of a knife and we don't know our situation in a sense. And part of the situation, right? Because it's a little bit evolving. And then the question is, for the initial thing, I worry that like some of the scope of services, like some of the deliverables might not be accurate, I guess.
I think that's probably true.
Yeah. And I don't think it's locked in per se. But I wanna understand whether this is what we're signing up for in terms of what we need. Like, can we spend like 2 hours on number 2, but really focus on consultation, for example, because that's really the bulk of where we're gonna need the Swiss Army knife, right? And I don't know what the situation is of how this is structured.
So just to kind of capture what you would like us to come back to you with, if anything at all. Would you like clarification on, like, do we need this now or do we wait? Is that what you're?
If I may, we can certainly turn this into an on-call consultant service. And
Which I
that
think it
100%
is.
okay with me, I mean, and put it on paper as such. I think the deliverables, initially, it was a very narrow scope as far as I saw it, which was mostly training, assessment, and then giving some recommendations, if you will. But bringing in the construction of the main library and Bob Lucas Library and understanding everything from schematic design to documents, to bidding, to all of that. I know I have a good idea on what it entails, but I also know that you, with all due respect, don't necessarily know what's coming down the line, nor do I, because we don't know, we can't predict the future. And so, being that the case, that's maybe why you're struggling with this to a certain extent, but I'm certainly open to, fine. We can certainly do it on an hourly basis based on your need moving forward without necessarily a cap on a time or a period. And then, as you and staff and the director needs my input, certainly glad to give it.
So here's one way we could do it, because I don't know that bringing this back again will solve the problems we're having, but I'm suggesting that maybe what we could do is when we structure the professional services agreement, it could be structured in such a way that it's a 1-year agreement with the option to renew for 2 subsequent years. That it's an hourly rate for consultation and training, as requested by the district, basically, on an as-needed basis. And then at a certain point, and I don't know that we're at that point yet, maybe there's some sort of clause in there around what deliverables might be requested from the district, and the idea, like, I do this with my clients sometimes for consulting, and it's like, it's like, okay, so we're, 6 months into this process. I can put together for you like a fundraising plan, and it will take me this many hours to do it, and do you want that or do you not want that? And so I think that insofar as deliverables are part of it, I feel like they should be things that we feel like have utility, and so if staff comes back to us and says, we really need this going forward, and it needs to do this, that, and the other thing, it needs to be in this format, we need to know these pieces, that feels really important to us. Great, let's do that, that seems amazing.
So what is the process for the point of order? So we passed this now, then we go back and we still have to formulate the service? Yeah.
No, what we would probably do is we would direct. We would
Nikki.
we would direct Nikki to enter into a professional services agreement. Kind of based on the stipulations that we had at the hourly rate specified. I do think, a first year not to exceed is fine, it's not gonna hurt anything, if we need to revisit it later, we can. And then she would go ahead and do that part, so it's basically us authorizing her to move forward with that process.
Right, so does that make sense, everyone? I guess?
Well, I look at it as he would be a tool in her toolbox. going
Sure,
forward.
that's right.
And we need a tool exactly like this. There's stories to tell.
Right,
you know,
right.
But
It goes for a while.
the question is, this can be rejiggered in the service agreement.
The
That
PSA,
makes
yeah, this
sense,
is
right?
not a contract, right?
Right.
What we have is is a proposal.
Right,
And then the professional services agreement, I think we could also say, we could ask Nikki to run it through the facilities committee real quick before it gets signed at that. point.
yeah, does that make sense? I think it makes sense for us, yeah,
I'm certainly
Yeah.
open to that idea.
yeah,
So then what it sounds like is that we are. There's not any edits that need to be made in terms of review and approval of the IT facilities assessment consultant. But we can approve that if that's what's going to happen and then drill down what that looks like in the professional services agreement. So there's not any changes that need to be made to this, is what I'm asking.
yes. that's
When
my
we- when
question too.
we need to vote.
I think that's right. I think the vote would be, let me try to make the motion and we'll see if it
Okay,
feels like
do
it makes sense. So I'm gonna move that we authorize the district director to enter into a professional services agreement with Mr. Bafico at the hourly rate, and with the cap not to exceed, for a year renewable for 2 additional years. And we request that as part of that process, she consult with the facilities committee before finalizing that PSA.
Beautiful.
Thank you. I can't repeat it, so I hope we got it.
Have you worded the whole thing or
I
motion?
second. Terry was speechless.
Then let's do a roll call vote. Yes, all right. Trustee Andrews.
Aye.
Trustee Clark.
Aye.
Trustee Lynn.
Aye.
And I vote for me. Woo, we did it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate you also hanging in there with us as we kind of figure this out ourselves. And I know we'll.
Well, it's complicated.
It's complicated and I am very, it makes me feel better certainly that we have somebody in our corner who's had this experience and I know we're gonna lean on that heavily. So.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And with the Jefferson reopening, it was very nice that they targeted some youth services and things on that one too.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that was strategic. So, and we can get into the particulars on that,
Right.
yes.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you answering questions that I didn't quite understand, so.
You're around, hopefully, to answer any more questions.
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you. All right, so let's move on to our next item, review and approval of our mid-year budget adjustments. And I believe, are we having a presentation on that? Christine?
Yeah, Kristen, speak to this agenda item.
Say it again.
Okay, we're gonna have Steve speak to this agenda item.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, hello again. Page 72 on your, in your packets, I believe is where this starts. There we go. Okay, so again, this was presented to the Finance Committee with the recommendation that it go to full board for approval. We'll go through the lines and then we'll see what kind of questions you might have. In terms of revenue, the first 4 lines are all proposed increases. We were very conservative in budgeting. Property tax assessments came in higher. Again, with the passport photos being increased, the reinstatement, interest earnings. This takes us much closer to what's being earned with rising rates. And then other revenue, the E-rate reimbursement, there's an increase there. In terms of expenses, there are some savings, salaried and hourly, due to the elimination of positions or some vacancies throughout the year. And because of those, lines 14, 16, 17, 18, and 20 all decrease accordingly for the insurance, compensation, retirement, and those things. Line 24 is an increase for insurance. Policy renewals did come in higher. Utilities, as we all know, gas has gone through the roof. So there's a slight increase there to account for those. Other operating, I spoke to a little bit earlier with the lease. The copier that was purchased will not be, it is not anticipated to be received yet this fiscal year. So the month-to-month lease, we need an increase there. There is a decrease from some of the vehicle and equipment maintenance. That's been less than anticipated. A slight increase for marketing. Some mail pieces and website development things were absorbed in this line. But then you'll notice the next line, it was a small amount that we've gone ahead and removed the website development. Line 35 with trustee election removed because of no contested seats and no requirement there. Auditing, again, auditing and financial, so increased financial services due to the elimination of that position. Legal fees, there were some employee-related services that required more than budgeted. Consultants, other, some IT and facilities, the IT and facilities assessment and technology budgets were absorbed, all moved into this line. So there's an increase there. Technology equipment, there's an increase because of the cameras, computers, and additional copiers. And with that piece, there's a note here, those were budgeted last year, but not received until this year. So that budget line has been moved to this year. The maintenance fees, some additional server warranties and so forth. Technology consultant, we're removing that and just moving that up into general consulting. So that's all in one other consulting line above. Telecommunications increased. Again, some of the fees that have come back based on hotspots, phones, and so forth are higher than were anticipated. Total library materials, there's some allocations between lines that you'll notice. The net overall change is a decrease. So there's a savings in library materials. The Mount Low chamber expenses, there was an increase to adult services for that. All ages, there's an increase. It was originally donated in donations and grants, and we've moved that to the general fund line. But the bottom line, line 70, is that instead of a budgeted $19,000 withdrawal from reserves, we're anticipating a $152,000 increase. And to give some credit to staff for, even though there are increases and decreases in lines, if you go back up to the first section on revenues, the increase for revenues is just slightly over what is being brought back to the reserve. So really, even though there are increases and decreases in lines, the entire increase in revenue will go back to the reserve. Any questions before I move to donations and grants?
I've got a question, and this is more maybe a question for Ashley. I'm interested if you could just talk a little bit about the materials budget and what you feel like worked and didn't work on that this year. I know we moved some stuff around and that's all good, but I'm just sort of curious, especially with our book budget.
Okay, so the book budget, we have moved some things around in the different collections based on reports and things we run just to take a look at circulation. So we've done some internal moving things around. We increased things like the video game collection budget amount, just because we had seen an increase in people checking those out. As far as anything else, I know it says we had a decrease of $2,000 in expenses, but I think that might have just been due to like Baker and Taylor, like us not getting things as we should. Like sometimes we order things, but they don't bill us or charge us for them until we actually receive the item. And we did experience some weird things happening there. So I don't know if that specifically addresses.
It does. I think kind of what I was asking is, do you feel like that the reason that budget went down is because we actually spent what we needed to spend and there wasn't a need to spend more, or because for various reasons, whether it's vendors or whatever, we weren't able to spend it out? Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yes, so we have a better tracking system in place now, but even with the spreadsheets that were previously being kept, we saw a lot of collections being way underspent, where it just didn't make sense for them to have that type of allocation. For example, in nonfiction, the 400s have their own budget line item, but the 400s are the dictionaries, the thesauruses, like certain things that don't require like a large budget. And so some things were just like weirdly given too much money, and even with repurposing some of it to other line items, it just still didn't make sense for, what people were actually checking out and coming for.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That's really, so it sounds like we kind of tightened up
Yes,
what's allocated to what.
yes, and it's so much better to the point where now, the selectors know exactly how much they need to spend per month
Yeah.
for each collection line item. And before, it was not being tracked as tightly. People were just kind of randomly given amounts, like it wasn't based on like any kind of reports or circulation usage or anything like that. So now we have like the process really fine tuned, where even when a selector decides like this year there's a lot of new materials that have come out in a certain genre or whatever. There's like certain forms they can put in or to ask for more funds, and we do some switching around to get them the funds, but like now it actually makes sense why they need the funds, and it's not just, here you go, here's $2,000 more.
Right.
And we have nothing to track. So at least now, if you were to ask me this question like next fiscal year, I'd be able to answer you even more specifically and say, it was because there were a lot of new releases and the mysteries, and
Yeah, cool.
we had to put in a reallocation.
That's
But
cool.
this is the first year of us doing the spreadsheet. So, the most I'm able to see is like what makes sense for each selector to spend.
I'm really happy to ask this question. I feel like what a success story. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
That was a great question, because now I understand the whole thing a lot better than I did before, so thanks for that good answer.
Okay, and for the donations and grants budget then, if you take a look at that, really what's happening here is additional grants from your support agencies, meaning additional expenses. So the net effect overall is no increase or decrease to fund balance, but that you are spending the additional funds. So those have come from the Friends of the Library, California State Library, and Khalifa. And in addition to that, and then part of that has to do again with the library, the mobile unit. The van was supposed to be received last year and is not anticipated to be received until this year. So each of the lines, I won't go ahead and read them, but most of them are simply increases to spend the additional funds that were granted. The one thing that is new on this line is there was a gift in kind for the Fab Lab, and that amounted to, I believe, about $20,000 that was increased. So that piece has already been done for the year, but we wanted to increase the revenue and the expenses to show that support in the budget. Any questions for donations and grants? The capital budget, no, at this point, it's still so early. There are no increases to the budget. However, it was anticipated that more would be spent. So we did do a proposed amendment to decrease all the lines closer to what the project manager has said. I know Nikki and other staff and I met with Jennifer just a few weeks ago and went through the budget again to more closely anticipate, now with some of the delays for some of the pieces you needed, what would be spent. So we are proposing quite a large decrease for this, not for the project in total, but for what will be spent in this fiscal year. So instead of using, using the $3 million, it would be only using closer to $660,000.
Right.
And I believe that's all I have for budget, unless there are other questions.
Are there any other questions?
Well, on the capital fund, we're not running into any covenants that have us spending money, early the way we're supposed to on a couple of categories, right? Wasn't there some activity in the capital fund that said we had to spend money by a certain point? You know what I'm talking
Yeah, I
about?
know what you're talking about. So so as part of the bond proceeds, those funds have to be spent or assigned within a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
So we're totally fine, because they have all been assigned, like
Yeah.
Jennifer could show you a very complex
Right.
spreadsheet. It's just that, as Christy said, we haven't actually spent them out because.
Okay, and that's the word I was searching for.
So we don't anticipate any issue with spending everything
Okay.
in time. That will definitely happen.
Any additional questions?
right, then, may we have a motion to review or to approve the mid-year budget adjustment? Second,
A second.
right, do a roll call vote, trustee Andrews.
Aye.
Trustee Clark.
Hi.
Trustee Lynn.
Aye.
And I vote for moi.
This looks really good. Thank you, Budget Committee. And thank you so much, Christine.
Thank you.
Christine.
We'll be coming to you soon with an FY24 budget in the coming months, so.
See you then. All righty, so the next item, we have the board retreat report presented by Danielle Nealon. And it is an information report, is the new here.
Danielle's not here to present, but the report is provided to the board this month for your review. So this is just a review of the retreat that took place on February 3rd. The library strategic plan was used as a basis for the discussions, and everything that came out of it was surrounded around that, the questions and everything. Just kind of overviewing, Danielle provided this, discussions around service population, priority partnerships and programs, community outreach and communications, building library leadership, priority goals for service transition plans related to the building and renovations, preparation for the next strategic plan. So there's items that are upcoming and immediately relevant to library operation. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
What, if anything, happens now? So I feel like we had a great conversation. We talked about a lot of things. We came up with 89 million things that maybe never gonna actually be able to do because no human person could do them, even given 10 years. But we did talk about some specific stuff, and I guess I'm just curious, like what happens next to any of those ideas?
We haven't had extensive conversation on this report here. So my interactions with Danielle, she presented here at a board meeting maybe a couple months ago, and then we knew that she was going to be meeting with you for the retreat, and some action items were going to come of it, but we haven't formally discussed like what actions will come. But we did build the operational plan around some of the things that we knew were going to come from this. So some elements of it are in there. But we definitely need to dive into this and turn this into actionable items, which we haven't done yet.
Or not, right? Because some of the stuff we talked about probably is not gonna be realistic or actionable, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it would be an interesting conversation to identify what things are actionable and what things can be. Because, you know, they could also all be actionable, but not reasonable or realistic. So, you know, of the actionable things, like what can actually be accomplished with the current resources, and then prioritize those things. It would be nice to, I agree, to see that, you know, presented, you know, after that conversation.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot, and, you know, it may not be doable, but it would be good to see what is doable and how, you know, the library can accomplish that, and also how we can support that.
That's right. That's right.
All right, any other questions or comments on the report by Danielle?
I guess I just ask that we have this come back as an agenda item in the next month or two, like, once everybody's had a chance to actually like look through it and go like, yeah, no, you guys are out to lunch, we're never gonna do that, but just, because I think to Camila's point as well, is like a lot of what we talked about was ways that we as trustees can show up and support and be more, you know, aligned with what's happening from the library side and how we can support that process. So I think that would be really helpful to have a sense of what that looks like.
Yeah, agreed.
Action item.
Yeah, sometimes you feel like these things that you do don't go anywhere.
Right.
You want to try to get as much, you know, momentum as you can out of these things when they're done. So,
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so can we add that to potential future agenda item?
Yeah. I can't believe that the retreat was just this month.
I know,
And
right?
I'm like, why haven't we? And I'm like, oh, it was
Just because it was like 5
It
minutes
felt
ago.
like it
Yeah.
was-
And a million other things are also happening.
Right.
At the same time. In a couple months, we're gonna be building a house, so. All right, so then moving on to the next item, we have a review of 8041 and a letter of support. Whether or not we want to get behind that or not, so I assume that you want to respond to the letter, maybe. Just some questions that you had coming in.
Yeah, I can explain the genesis of the letter here. This was along with the other things that happened at that town hall meeting. They sent the slides to me. And on there was some examples of what a letter could be to the committee that's going to be looking at this first. And this is the template for it. I used that and I added some language, basic language from our strategic plan, actually, the one that we've got posted online that just talks about the core values, a little bit of what the library is trying to do. And I think at the, 40,000 foot level, we are interested in digital equity because, our patrons are moving in this direction. We need to be setting the next, generation and so on. So it's a very big overview about our support for it, but I think it works. And what I had in mind, I don't think we've done anything exactly like this before, would be to have a board vote on it and then simply gussy up the letter in a way that makes it look really good and properly spaced and typeset and so on with a signature block. I'm still not sure what that should be, probably just Jason, but I'm not sure. Or the two of you, the way you sign documents, together. But and get that out to the right committee. The thing that's holding this up a little bit procedurally is that I don't know what the committee is yet. I got a couple calls into the co-sponsor of the bill that were helping me through this. And I haven't heard back yet about where I'm supposed to address this to get to the proper spot. I'll probably, with Nikki's help, go back to Holden's office.
Yeah.
Because I haven't gotten a big response from them yet when I called them about this stuff. I haven't called them in fairness to them. I've emailed them and haven't gotten any response. But I think she's got a pretty good relationship with him.
Yeah.
So you would figure out the final disposition that Nikki and I of this letter and how it'd be formatted and signed and so on and send it out. But it does seem appropriate somehow to get a board vote on this to show our approval and add that to the language here.
So it would be from the trustees on behalf of the library district.
Yeah, we could do it. Sure, we could do it that way. You can.
Well, what would you recommend? I guess.
Well, I would recommend that we would. The way to do it would be to get the proper language in there and get it all ready to go.
Mhm.
And then have the board of trustees listed
Yeah.
along with a couple of, I don't think all of us need to sign it. But I think it should be signed probably by Jason and by you as well. And get that out to them. There's a bit of a time crunch here because I don't know how long it's gonna be. It's gonna, before it loses its effectiveness in the committee that we're shooting for. But I'll talk to Nikki about that.
I like the idea of, I guess your question is around, logistics, like what is appropriate,
Yeah,
and I
what's-
like the
yeah,
idea
yeah.
of the Altadena Library Board of Trustees on behalf of the Altadena Library. I'm fine with that, I don't know if there's.
Yeah, I just don't know what the rules are, whether it's like
Right, exactly.
Nikki who signed this, or is it us, or like.
So
It's just
Or
make
who
sure.
it's even coming from,
Right,
if it's the library or if, but I think that
Right.
if we're approving it, if that happens, then it does come from us.
It's a little bit like the proclamations we see from the assembly people and the state senators. So you did a really good job, Webster's Pharmacy or whatever. It's a little bit like that, but it's coming from us, this time instead of from them.
So because this is a statement of policy, right, it's appropriate to come from the board. So
okay,
that's one of those things where, like, because the board's job is to set policy, if you were like, we think that, the state of California should only, whatever. If it's a policy recommendation, then it comes from the board. If it's an operational thing, then it comes from usually the district director.
and then, like you said, we still have minor changes, but we're just approving the intent.
Correct.
The concept, yeah.
And I will say that I appreciate you putting in the specific language from the, from the library and the strategic plan. I think that was well done.
Yeah, I lifted that from our website, they got it on there.
Well, if it makes it, if it doesn't make it too cumbersome, Terry, I might suggest also putting in a little bit of language about the fact that we provide services. We, we log in any given year, X number of sessions on our computer, check out X many digital hotspots, and we know that this is really important to our patrons.
Well, you only have to look at page,
That's exactly, right? We've got all our staff right there.
well, I mean, I think we set a record in e-resource checkouts and public wireless sessions here.
And it's only growing.
It's only growing.
And so I think that, that adds credibility that we're providing these services, we're trying to do what we can, but we can't be the sole
I
solution.
mean, I don't know why I was trying to make it a one-page letter.
It can get typeset however.
No, that's a great idea.
But I think that might be
Having some language in there about that, so I'll work on that part too.
Awesome. I think
But,
it's a really good idea.
Assemblyman Holden's really been a big supporter of the library.
Sure.
When we get a chance to support some of his legislation, which really dovetails into what we do, it's a win-win, and so it's a good opportunity for us.
Agreed.
Okay, I'll work on that.
So then can we get a motion to approve drafting a letter of support of AB 41?
So moved.
Second.
We'll move to a roll call vote. Trustee Andrew,
Aye.
Trustee Clark,
Hi.
Trustee Lim,
Aye.
and I vote for you. Awesome. So our next item, we have OSHA log of work-related injuries and illnesses. It's an informational item. Will one of you be giving background information on this?
Okay, so this report will be brought to the board annually, just to inform you of the number of workmen's comp claims. And we are happy to report that there aren't any.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah, there was a lot of zeros
Questions or
on there.
comments?
Hooray.
Keep it up. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
We'll
walk under a ladder.
Exactly, everyone exits the building safely.
That's right.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, we can move on to the next item, which is governance and the LAFCO election results. I think that's you, Karen. You had a take on that?
It didn't come through me, but it went to the packet, and I can tell you that the one that we voted, we agreed to vote for, Sharon Shari received 5 votes, so she did not get this.
No.
Yeah.
That's all right.
But it's interesting because when you see the total number of votes on this, it really shows how much every vote counts in this thing they're doing.
Yeah.
And it's just having one person that, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Robert Lewis.
Yeah, Mr. Lewis will be the LAFCO voting representative.
Just one. Okay. Oh, I see it. There it is. Thank you. All right. Moving on to the next item, announcements and planning. Do we have any correspondence? No. Any? We do have a proposed future agenda item, right? Which is
A to-do list for
a
us.
to-do list. All right. That takes us to everything on our agenda. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I move we adjourn.
Motion carries. The meeting is adjourned at 7:05. Thank you. Nice work.